G'day legends, welcome back to the Old Skool Broncos Podcast, the place where we talk all things Brisbane Broncos from a fan's point of view. No media spin, no PR fluff, just a straight talk you'd have with your mates at the pub after a game, or before one if you had a few decent warm-ups. Now, if you tune into episode 1, thank you. And if you're new here, buckle up, because today we've got a bit of everything. First up, we're going to talk about the Footy Gods. And I'm not talking about the immortal greats. I'm talking about the strange, unseen forces in rugby league that seem to have the final say on whether your season flies or falls apart in the space of a couple of minutes. Then we'll shift gears and talk about Te-Kura, the towering young prop who's got the NFL sniffing around. That's right, American football teams are looking at the Broncos forward, and not just for a laugh. The Lions and the Jets have been in the conversation, and while it's early days, it raises a big question. Could we lose another big man to another code? Then we're going to look at the greatness of Kevin Walters and try and understand why he has been underrated his whole career. His stats are amazing, and anybody that has played with him has praised him, yet the jokester has never really been taken seriously. After that, we'll take a look at the Scott Prince journey and his commitment to the women's game in his post-playing days, from premiership winner to elite women's coach. And to finish, we're going to look at something a little bit lighter, the latest cult following that's building at Suncorp Stadium. Every club has its quirks and characters. Right now, there's a new difference maker that has the crowd cheering.
Yeah! Old Skool Broncos! Yeah!
Today, we're going a little deeper, beyond stats and strategy, and talking about something every footy fan deep down believes in, the Footy Gods. We live in a country that's largely walked away from faith. Religion, spirituality, it's not front and centre in most people's lives anymore. But in footy, we absolutely still believe. We might not go to church every Sunday, but if you've ever whispered a quiet prayer before a goal kick or screamed, "We're cursed!" after a dodgy bunker call, congratulations. You are a believer. You believe in momentum, you believe in luck, and you definitely believe in the wrath of the Footy Gods. And the other night, they were angry. The Broncos weren't just on the wrong side of the scoreboard against the Storm. They were on the wrong side of divine punishment. One play, one moment, and both our halves, Adam Reynolds and Ezra Mam, clutching their hamstrings like they were sniped from the stands. Later in the game, Selwyn Cobbo gets carried off with the same injury. That's not just bad luck, that's biblical. It felt like a sacrifice. And for a second, I genuinely considered launching a GoFundMe for hamstring donations. If anyone's got a spare one lying around, we are taking express delivery. Now the question is this the end of our season or the beginning of the rebirth? Because for all the heartbreak in the moment, something else happened. The team didn't fold. The reshuffle was wild. Hunt to 7, Stags to 6, Walters at 9, second rowers playing centre, both swapping sides of the field, but it didn't collapse the structure. It galvanised the forward pack. Payne Haas and Pat Carrigan became men possessed. They were everywhere, hitting, running, dragging us up the middle. And for the first time this season, the entire forward pack clicked. We've been bagged all year for lacking punch in the middle, for not getting into the grind. But the other night, they answered those critics. And let's give credit where it's due. The Storm weren't playing poorly. That was one of their best defensive performances of the season too. They hadn't put together a complete performance until that very moment. In the opening 20 minutes, it was end to end. They were bending us up the middle with quick play the balls, and we were scrambling like madmen. But our attack looked sharp too. We were pushing it wide, asking questions, moving the ball, and then, boom, both halves down. And somehow, we stayed in it. The second half wasn't just gutsy, He was character defining. So, is this punishment? Or is it preparation? Maybe the footy gods are testing us. Maybe they saw a Broncos side too reliant on flair and finesse and said, time to earn it the hard way. Maybe sacrificing a few Steedens and a post-game beer offering to the rugby league heavens wouldn't hurt either. Because the path to a premiership isn't always clean. Sometimes you need pain to find purpose. Sometimes your season has to break before it comes together. Now here's the thing. The players have had their scans and we've got an indication of how bad they are. We're looking at, 4 weeks for Reynolds, maybe 6 weeks for the others. Now that's a big chunk of the run home and it pushes into the finals. But it's not season ending, hopefully. It would mean there's a chance to have them all back if we went deep in. In the meantime, we've got depth. We've got cover, and we might have just unearthed a forward pack that's finally willing to grind for every metre. If the backs can hold their own while the big boys keep the fire going, the cavalry arriving in September could make for one hell of a comeback story. It also doesn't hurt that we've got Ben Hunt at number 7. He did get the most try assists last season for the Dragons. So for now, keep the faith, light a candle, burn some sage, chuck a few Steedens on the fire as a peace offering. Because whether you believe in the footy gods or not, one thing's for sure, this Broncos side just found some fire. And maybe, just maybe, that's divine intervention. Make sure you hit like, subscribe, and drop a comment below. And all I want to know is, do you believe in the footy gods? Am I being overly optimistic here? And what would you sacrifice to bring our boys back?
Remember to like, share, and subscribe to help support the Old Skool Broncos podcast.
Te-Kura, the towering young Broncos forward, reportedly in talks with the NFL. Yep, you heard that right. The Detroit Lions and the New York Jets have both reportedly had conversations with him. Now, on the surface, sounds like the classic code switch cash grab, but the more I think about it, I reckon it actually makes a lot of sense. Let's start with the NRL. It's not the same game that the big boys dominated 5 or 10 years ago. The 6 again rule, faster pace, reduced stoppages, it's all favouring mobility, agility, and engine over sheer size. Take Big Nelson Asafa-Solomona, for example. A few years back, he was the enforcer in the comp. But now, he's still dangerous with the ball in hand, sure, but he's not quite as influential as he once was. He's getting found out about with the speed and lateral movement required in defence. His big body is now a challenge in the middle. It's hard to keep firing in the middle long enough to dominate games when you're moving that much beef around. He's fast becoming too big for the way the modern game's played. And Te-Kura? He's bigger than Nelson. Taller, huge frame, but he's still young. He hasn't developed the aggression in his game yet. He's still carrying some puppy fat, hasn't leaned out yet, and he doesn't have the motor of a Payne Haas. And that's no dig at him. Very few players do. But that's the benchmark now. So what does the NFL actually make sense? The NFL is a completely different beast. If you're a big, explosive unit with raw size and power, you can be coached into a very specific role, the one the NFL wants. You're not being asked to play 60 minutes. You're not expected to cover the field both ways, back-to-back sets in 30-degree heat. You've got your assignment, do it well, and recover. All about explosion. Ben's frame and the right training could absolutely suit the NFL. A defensive end maybe, tight end. Could even throw him in as an offensive tackle. With the right program and time to develop, he could carve out a long and lucrative career, especially if it lights him up. And that's the key here. What actually drives him? Because he's not a cult hero yet. He's not a locked-in first grader. He's still on the rise. And if his heart's more drawn to the challenge and spectacle of the NFL than grinding it out in reserve grade waiting for a Broncos jersey, well, fair play to him. So what does it mean to the Broncos? From a Broncos fan point of view, yeah, it did sting to lose a kid with that much potential. We've seen glimpses of Te-Kura in action, and you just can't coach that size. But if he heads to the NFL, it wouldn't be the first time Brisbane has lost a talent to another code, and it won't be the last. Let's rewind for a second. This club has already lost some of the brightest stars before they even reached their peak. Wendell Sailor, Lottie Te-Kura both went to rugby union. Carmichael Hunt left to AFL and then later union. And of course, Israel Folau followed suit the same way. These were international level athletes, origin stars, game breakers, and they all walked away in their prime. At the time, it felt like a hammer blow, like a dynasty was unraveling, but the Broncos survived. Not just survived, they rebuilt, reloaded, and kept competing. Because that's what this club does. We're not built on one player. We're built on a culture, a system, a belief in bringing the next man through. And sometimes when a player walks away, it opens the door for someone else to step up. So if Te-Kura does go to the NFL, good on him. Go chase the dream. But make no mistake, the Broncos will go on. Anyway, that's my take. But Te-Kura to the NFL, I think it's a good move for him, but it's also good if he stays. And it's not the end of the world for us. Either way, Brisbane's been here before. We've lost stars, we've adapted, and we'll keep doing what we've always done. Developing talent, building resilience, and chasing premierships. Let me know what you think. Should we fight harder to keep these big names? Or has the game changed too much for some body types? Hit me up in the comments or in the Broncos fan groups.
The field's alive with stories told of battles fought and legends bold. Cotton jerseys, colors proud. We wear the past, no backing down. Glory days and endless fight. Rugby league, our guiding light.
Has Kevin Walters been the most underrated great in rugby league? A 6-time premiership winner, state of origin hero, and now the man who dragged the Broncos out of their darkest days? Yet somehow, he's never quite been taken seriously. G'day legends, welcome back to the Old Skool Broncos Podcast, where we talk footy like fans, not journalists. No agendas, no fluff, just a good old-fashioned Broncos chat. Kevin Walters has always been a bit of a larrikin, whether he was playing, coaching, or spinning yarns as a commentator. From his goofy charm on the Queensland Footy Show to his #1 hit, Hey Hey with the Broncos, Kev has been the bloke who never took himself too seriously. And that's exactly why so many fans love him. But has that same personality been a double-edged sword? Has the knockabout funny guy image made people undervalue his footy brain, his resilience, and what he's actually done for the game? Let's break it down. As a player, Kevvie's record is elite. He played 20 origins for Queensland, 11 tests for Australia, won 6 premierships, 5 with the Broncos and 1 with the Raiders. But even with those stats, he was regularly overlooked or undervalued. Let's go back to 94. Queensland other than pairing Kevvie with Alfie. On Kangaroo tours, he wasn't the face of the campaign. He was leading the Emus, the reserves, keeping spirits high off of the field. And in 1993, after helping steer the Broncos to another premiership all the way back from 5th, the Clive Churchill Medal went to Brad Mackay from the losing team, when Kevvie was clearly one of the best on the paddock. Kev was the guy you'd forget until you needed him. He was never the poster boy, but he was always there when it mattered. Some say it's the old batting after Bradman curse, but in this case, following Wally Lewis in the 6 jersey. Others say it's because he was too humble, too selfless, too much of a team man. Alf got the accolades and Kev was happy to let him take them. As a coach, it's been a similar story. Kev did the hard yards, assisting under Wayne Bennett, then Craig Bellamy, then Mal Meninga. Coached in the Q Cup, he coached in the Super League. But NRL head coaching gigs? Nothing. Eventually, he was handed the Queensland job. But again, only after others passed. He was the Stephen Bradbury pick, but he made it count. 2 Origin Series wins, 2 losses, but more importantly, he was the man who transitioned Queensland out of the Big Four era, Slater, Cronk, Smith, Thurston, and into the new generation. He blooded Munster, Holmes, Hunt, and Moore. And when players misbehaved, he benched them. Huge calls, especially for a rookie coach. But he did it, and he still didn't get the credit. When Wayne Bennett left the Broncos for the second time, many thought it was Kev's turn then. But again, the club chose not to hand him the keys. Instead, they went for Seibold, polished, prepared, and packing a PowerPoint. That era ended in disaster with the COVID chaos. A wooden spoon, and finally, Seibold was gone and Kevvie was appointed. But it wasn't a triumphant homecoming. He wasn't backed with open arms. He even had to buy his own polo shirt, organise his own media presser. The board handed him a broom and told him to clean up the mess. And he did it. He recruited Adam Reynolds, reset the culture, slowly rebuilt the squad, and in 2023, they were back. They were only a few minutes away from winning a premiership. 2024 was a roller coaster. Injuries hit hard, Origin drained the squad, the Vegas trip, the weight of expectation, grand final hangover, it never quite clicked. And as results dipped, so did support. The board decided a change was needed and Michael Maguire was announced for 2025. Some said Kev had taken the team as far as he could. Others reckoned he was pushed. Hung out to dry by a club that forgot how far he had brought them. Kev isn't your clipboard coach. He's not going to break down 12 phases of block plays with a laser pointer. Like Bennett, like Meninga, and like Ricky Stewart, he's a man manager. He gets players up. He builds belief. He brings the team together. That works when you've got the cattle, when you've got the trust. But in today's game, with analysts, pressure, and brutal media, the man manager has to fight harder to prove they belong. And now here we are in 2025, and Kev's finally been given the Australian coaching job. Or has he? Because he's only been appointed for 3 games in November. And again, it wasn't a celebration. It wasn't a coronation. It was default mode. Freddie Fittler was ruled out. No one else fit the criteria. So, Kevvie it is. The guy with 11 tests as a player, 2 Origin Series wins, and a recent NRL Grand Final appearance gets a 3-game trial? Why? Is it because Kev wanted to keep his options open in case an NRL job became available next year? Or is it, once again, the case of the jokester not being taken seriously? You've got to wonder, if his name was Craig or Trent or Mal, would it still be a 3-game gig? Or would they have locked him in for the long haul? So let's bring it all together. Kevin Walters, 6 premierships, 20 Origins, 11 tests, a Broncos rebuild, and now coaching the Kangaroos, sort of. And yet still treated like the understudy, the backup, the feel-good story, the larrikin you let in when all the serious guys say no. But maybe that's why Kev's legacy will last, because when others built their profiles, he built teams. Kevin Walters might never get the credit he deserves. But for those of us that have watched it all unfold, the wins, the knockbacks, the rebuilds, we know he's a legend, a fighter, and one of the most underrated champions rugby league has ever seen. So that's it for today. Do you think Kev's been underrated or rated just right? Let me know in the comments or on the socials.
Yeah! Old Skool Broncos! Yeah!
Today, we're talking about a headline that might have flown under the radar. Scott Prince extending his deal as head coach of the Broncos NRLW for another 2 seasons. It's big news on its own, but when you look at who Scott Prince is, the journey he's taken, and what's happening in the women's game right now, it's huge. Scott Prince's story starts a long way from Red Hill, way up in Mount Isa, out in northwest Queensland. Footy mad country, where if you've got a steed in your hands, you've got a dream. Prince's talent was obvious early. Quick feet, sharp mind, that classic halfback swagger. He was picked up by the Cowboys in the late 90s and made his NRL debut as a teenager. But back then, the Cowboys were a struggling side and Prince was still learning the ropes. In 2001, he got the call up to go to the Broncos, and it was a big one. He was brought in to fill the shoes of none other than the duo of Alan Langer and Kevvie Walters. Both had just retired. That's not just stepping into a big role, that's stepping into iconic territory. But then came the setbacks, and horrible ones. 2 broken legs in the space of a couple of years, both while trying to cement himself as the Broncos' new number 7. It was cruel. Every time he got some momentum, injury just took it away. By the end of 2003, thinking his path back into the Broncos' topside was blocked, Prince made the tough call to leave. He signed with the West Tigers, and in one of rugby league's little quirks of fate, not long after he left, Ben Ikin announced his retirement. The very spot Prince had been chasing was suddenly open again. But he was already gone. If there's a silver lining, it's that the move changed his life forever. At the Tigers, Prince flourished. He became captain, found his best form, and in 2005, led them to their first ever premiership. He was the Clive Churchill medalist in the grand final, proof that he wasn't just good enough for the big stage, he owned it. After that, he became the foundation halfback and co-captain of the Gold Coast Titans in 2007. He was the face of that franchise from day one, steering them to a preliminary final in 2010. Then, in 2013, he came full circle back to the Broncos to finish his playing career in the maroon and gold. The club his family had held close to their hearts. Prince even buried his father in a Broncos polo shirt. But retirement didn't mean disappearing. Prince stayed connected to the club, taking on development roles, working with young players, and throwing himself into the community program. He was often the Broncos' face in schools, junior clinics, and grassroots events, building relationships and growing the game. That's where you started to see the seeds of his coaching path. He wasn't just running drills, he was teaching, guiding, and connecting. Fast forward to mid-2023, Prince takes over as Broncos NRLW head coach. And here's the thing, plenty of former NRL players aim for the men's coaching pathway, juniors, feeder clubs, NRL assistants. Prince chose differently, committed to the women's program, and he stayed there. That decision speaks volumes. The NRLW isn't an afterthought anymore. It's a serious growing competition full of elite athletes, and Prince has treated it exactly that way. His impact has been immediate, from structure, smart game plans, and higher standards. One of the biggest moments under his watch, bringing Te-Kura Upton back to the Broncos. Upton's a game changer. A former premiership winner with the Broncos and Newcastle, Clive Churchill medalist, and one of the most electric fullbacks in the sport. She'd gone to the Knights, won more titles, and returned to Brisbane at the peak of her powers. But Prince didn't just sign her, he elevated her straight into the co-captaincy alongside the great Ali Brigginshaw. Now this is smart coaching. Brigginshaw's a legend, the face of the Broncos NRLW since day one, an on-field general and a leader you'd follow into battle. But she's closer to the end of her career than the start. Prince is managing the transition perfectly, overlapping the eras so that when Brigginshaw eventually hangs up the boots, the leadership baton is already in safe hands. Upton gets to learn leadership with one of the best in the business beside her, and the team gets stability through the change. So why does this matter? This is bigger than the Broncos. The women's game is booming. More teams, bigger crowds, better TV coverage, and kids dreaming of wearing an NRLW jersey. Having someone like Prince, with his experience, his calm head, and his proven record, Committing long term is a huge vote of confidence in the competition's future. Tells the players, the fans, and the young girls in the stands that it isn't a side project. This is the real deal. So when you look at Scott Prince's journey, from Mount Isa to the Cowboys, to a cruel run of injuries at the Broncos, to premiership glory at the Tigers, to building the Titans, and finally coming home, this coaching role makes perfect sense. He's always been a builder, a leader, and a competitor. Now he's pouring all of that into the Broncos NRLW. With Prince locked in until 27, Mika Upton and Ali Brigginshaw sharing the captaincy, and a generation of players coming through, the future is bright in maroon and gold. That's all for today. But if you're not already following the NRLW, you're missing out on some of the best rugby league going around.
The field's alive with stories told of battles fought and legends bold. Cotton jerseys, colours proud. We wear the past, no backing down. Glory days and endless fight. Rugby league, our guiding light.
Let's talk about Billy Walters. For years, he's been one of the most polarising names on our team sheet, and not because of his own performances, but because of his surname. When you're the son of Kevin Walters, a 6-time premiership winner, Maroons legend, and Broncos royalty, expectations are brutal. Fair or not, Billy's entire NRL career has been judged through the lens of Kevvie's son. And look, Billy's journey to first grade wasn't flashy. He didn't debut straight out of high school with a $1 million deal and a highlight reel. He came through the Storm system, where he was carving up for East Tigers in the Queensland Cup. Clearly too good for that level, but blocked by the stars ahead of him. He toiled away for ages before finally making his debut for Melbourne in 2019. It wasn't until a move to the West Tigers that he got a run of games, playing a mix of hooker and in the halves. Solid, reliable, but still in that depth player category. Then as fate would have it, Kevvie took the Broncos job and Billy came home. And with that, the nepotism calls kicked off in full force. To be fair, the criticism wasn't all hate. Most people weren't saying Billy was terrible. The frustration was more that he wasn't elite. And in a spine that included Reece Walsh, Adam Reynolds, and Ezra Mam, he looked like the passenger. The bloke just along for the ride. It was a bit unfair considering the small amount he was taking in the salary cap compared to the other superstars. But here's where the story gets interesting. Because over the last few years, Billy's grown. He started in the 2023 Grand Final at hooker. That doesn't happen by accident. Yes, the Broncos lost, but Billy played his role, and you could see that spark starting to come out. And then 2024 happened. A rough season. Kevvie sacked, and the whispers starting again. That'll be it for Billy. No dad, no spot. Except, he didn't disappear. He earned his spot again under new coach Madge Maguire. Not just held his spot too, he found his groove. Now he's become the impact player off the bench, and I mean impact. Broncos fans are calling him the difference. He comes on, and the energy lifts. The ruck speeds up. He sneaks tries, setting up line breaks, pushing the pace. All the stuff fans love. And the cheers? They're real. When Billy comes on, you can hear it. He's gone from being the coach's kid to the people's player. So what's changed? Obviously the shadow. But I think confidence is the real key. For a long time, you could see Billy was hesitant. Like he didn't feel like he belonged in the NRL. But if you watched him in the Q Cup, you knew he had the skills, the vision, and the footy brain. It just took time and a mountain of pressure to break through. So, is Billy finally seen for the...
Yeah! Old Skool Broncos! Yeah!
Now that's it for today. But if you're enjoying this kind of deeper dive, hit the subscribe button and tell a mate, particularly a Broncos fan. This is the Old Skool Broncos Podcast. Let's go, Broncos. alters the difference. So what do you think? Has Billy finally stepped out of the shadow? Or did you